To understand how to color correct images, you first need to learn a few fundamental photography concepts. We're going to start with the histogram, window, and histogram. And I'll grab the word histogram and rip the panel off so that it's floating. And I'll collapse the navigator. I've opened 3 different types of images, what's known as a high key image, and the way I remember it is high key means a lot of highlight, a lot of light data in the image. In fact, a good example would be a white bedroom with white bedding and white curtains in the middle of the day. All of that's going to be light data. If you look at the histogram is basically a map of where the data lies in your image. So here, this is the light end of the histogram, and all of the data is piled up on that end. If I click the low-key image, meaning a dark photo, you could see there's barely any details visible in this dog's face. All of the data, or the majority of it, is piled up in the dark end of the histogram. There's a little bit in the midtone, but then it drops fairly flat in the highlight. I do have a lot of white in this window, but that data probably doesn't exist. It might be too bright for the low-end camera that was used to capture it. Finally, here is a mid-key image. Mid-key means most of the data is piled in the midtone. This image has a lot of grays. There's not a lot of black, a little bit in the door here, so I get some spikes. There's not a lot of true whites. The sky is fairly flat, and I could see small pieces of white detail, or maybe in the sign in the background, but there really isn't much else that's pure white. So if I look at all 3 of these, window, arrange, 3 up vertical. As I click on each one, the high key, you could see its histogram, the mid key, and the low key. And you could compare like an image map of the data that exists in each. Now the histogram panel has a few different views. It starts on the compact view, and this is known as the panel menu, the 3 or 4 little lines with the down arrow. I'm going to click and choose the expanded view. And in the expanded view, I get far more information. In fact, I'll cover up my other panels for now with the histogram. And even beyond that, I can hit Shift-Tab, so none of the panels on the right are distracting me, and then choose Window Histogram. And now it can float anywhere, and I can focus on it. So, for example, if I click on the high key, and a little trick, you can right-click or control-click and choose Consolidate All to here. So this is the only image I'm looking at. They're back in the tabbed windows. With this image, I can get some readouts. There's a few dials in the histogram. The mean value means it's the average intensity value for the overall image. If I look at the mid key, you'll see it's at a 128, and the low key is at an 81. But in the high key, I get the highest number, 202. And you have to imagine a lot of these values in RGB color levels. RGB goes from 0 to 255, and here's a great way to see it. In RGB, by clicking on the foreground color picker, 000 is black. No light on, the absence of color gives you black. 255, and I'm hitting Tab to jump down. 255, 255 is white. All lights on produces white, like the visible spectrum. The visible spectrum being Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and back to red. So I'll just click Cancel here, but I wanted to show you how RGB levels work. The second reading is the standard deviation. It's basically how widely the intensity varies in the image. So here I have 45, here I have 47, here I have 72. There's a dramatic shift from dark to light in this shot that we don't have so much in this shot or even in the high key shot because we have a lot of skin tones and even the eye color and the detail down here. The next is median. Median is the middle value in the range of intensities. So the median here is 218. Here it's 130. Here it's 70. You'll notice median and mean tend to hover close to one another. Then you could see pixels, the total number of pixels used to calculate this histogram. This image has 3 million of them calculating this histogram, 3,871,000. This image only has 155,000. So this was probably taken at a lower setting, or maybe it's had JPEG compression done to it a few times. This one is actually a smaller file, but has more pixels used to develop these numbers. And this one, the iPhone image, also has 3 million, 3,898,000. So these two are comparable. I happen to know that this one's been modified a few times. So pixels have been trashed because it was saved as JPEG more than once. Even though it exists in TIFF now, it's been baked or resaved several times. Finally, in pointing out the histogram, there's a lot more that we could go over. The most important thing to me as I measure color values is if I click on an individual spot, for example here, I can see a color level from 0 to 255, but a more precise number for me is this, percentile. This would measure from 100% to 0%. If I look at the low key or the dark image, 100% to 0%. I don't know about you, but I can picture where 37 is on a scale from 0 to 100. 37% black would be a medium gray, not dark because it's not 50%, or 75 would be darker. But if you ask me where 37 is in color levels in RGB from 0 to 255, I have a harder time imagining that. I have to say in my head, 0, 0, 0, the absence of light is black. 255, 255, 255, all lights on is white. So a 37 in RGB would actually be very dark, where 200 would be very light. So these are principles of color and color correction and values you will need to learn to work with in order to color correct in Photoshop. Now I want to finish by showing you the eyedropper tool. I call the eyedropper tool the on-screen densitometer. A densitometer is a device I used when I was a prepress operator to measure color values. It bounces light off and gives me a reading. But I never use it on point sample because that might give me a random reading. On higher resolution images, 3x3 is recommended up here in the options bar, or even 5x5. As our cameras get more powerful and we capture more data, these numbers will go up, but I still stick with 3x3. And I'll show you under Window, Info. Info will give me an on-screen densitometer or measurement of RGB, color levels, and CMYK, ink percentages. So here I could see that the couch is hovering in the 30 to 40% range. It would be considered a mid-tone. If I move to the dog's face, it's all 65 and above, 74, 83. It's a shadow, a dark area. And if I check out the lighter image, in the whites, I'm getting 2 or 3% white, and this coat does have a little yellow cast to it, so I could see yellow is a higher number. If I check out the eye whites, I'm actually getting a pretty balanced shot there. In a neutral area, the recipe for CM and Y looks correct to me. But that's a story for another day. All this information may sound like I'm speaking French to you right now, but let it marinate for a while. Take some readouts using the info panel of your images and take a look at what your histogram shows when you open a different file. Your homework is to listen to this video again in the next week or two to review what we've covered.